Episode 10, The Whistle of a Bullet. The man frowned, clenching his jaw. Vesper pursed her lips, taking no more than a second to think. Her expression turned into disgust with a slight jerk of her head, an inconspicuous order to the younger witch. She pointed in Nova's direction. Vesper wants me to try to get away. There are cameras in the cafe. If we end up having to use magic, it's better to do it somewhere more private instead of wasting energy on disrupting the signal. Nova dashed around the corner and started running, acutely aware of the footsteps and shouting echoing closely behind her. "Call the Magistrum! I'll stall her!" "Okay, don't let her get away." Heavy running, shortness of breath. "Stop!" Nova wanted to hide in the alley, but noticing two people at the other end of it, she turned back. "I can't attract more attention, but there's nowhere else to go." The man walked slowly towards her. Without taking his eyes off of her, he pulled a gun and pointed it at her. "You're out of luck. You got the wrong guy. I told you to stop. Don't even think of waving your arms. I'll put a bullet in your head." Okay. She slowly raised her hands. Her heart was racing as fast as light, her eyes glued to the muzzle. "The Magistrum will be here soon, and there will be one less freak on the streets. Thanks to me." Nova swallowed, raising her arms even higher. She knew better than to speak, afraid she'd provoke the man to rash actions. "Feels like he wouldn't have a guilty conscience even if he did kill me." The cashier smirked as if to confirm her thoughts. Nova glanced at Vesper, who was standing behind their aggressor. She nodded, bracing herself. "Vesper won't be able to attack first, otherwise he'll hear her voice and realize she's a witch when she starts casting her spell. She can't risk her cover. I have to slow him down." "What are you looking at?" Taking a deep breath, Nova moved her fingers slightly. "I said don't move!" She felt something sting on the back of her neck, as if warning her. Shin's rune. The next moment, a shot rang out on the quiet street. The bullet whistled, rushing towards the catcher's chest. The smell of burnt gunpowder filled her nostrils, pressed into her skin, making her inside shrink. A split second, and it would be over. Descend not through. The bullet stopped as if stuck in viscous, vibrating air. The metal gleamed, reflecting the dim light of the street lamps. Nova felt the sour taste of vomit in her mouth, the bullet shuddering menacingly, and she had to bring her focus to the spell again so as to not lose control. Using all of her presence to maintain the time stop in the sphere she created, she looked at the shooter. The spell stopped all the objects closest to me, objects and creatures. But time sought to continue its course. Her mouth was dry, beads of sweat trickled down the back of her neck. "Vesper, I can't hold him forever." Vesper suddenly seemed to come to her senses. Pale, disoriented, she blinked a couple of times and gathered herself to recite the necessary spell. But before she could do that, a cat appeared in the alley. Oh, it's Onyx. Realizing her plan, Nova released the spell and jumped to the side. The bullet flew to the wall nearby building. The confused man fell to his knees. The catcher's powers weakened his body, and Onyx took advantage of that. The cashier doubled over, screaming in pain as Onyx's burned eyes met his. Having covered the distance between them 2 leaps, the Anamorphix jumped on his back, raking her sharp claws over it. Soon the man fell unconscious from the painful shock. "We need to get out of here. Too much commotion. Someone will be here soon." After finding an escape route, the 3 of them left the alley, hiding in the dark. It took them some time to find the entrance to the tunnels, but soon these tunnels led their way to one of the shelters in the area. A young woman opened the door for them. "Signora." "Hi, Maya. Are your parents home?" "No, they're in Florence." "May we come in?" "I just need to call them first. They told me to report every new guest if their name isn't already in the book." Vesper nodded, approving of the girl's cautiousness. When everything was settled, Nova fell on the sofa with a sigh. She was feeling sick, not only from the tension, but from the realization that someone would shoot at her like that, considering her life less valuable just because she was born a witch. The catcher bit her tongue. She wasn't supposed to think that. She and all the others were wicked. Wasn't that the justification enough for wanting to get rid of them? Could anyone be blamed for wanting that? I'm not just a witch. I'm an extremely dangerous witch. But still, killing is taking too far. I can't just... It was... She looked down at her stomach, where the bullet would have been if she hadn't stopped it. The realization of how close she'd come to death again sent goosebumps all over her body. The moment I leave you, you get into trouble. Onyx tried to smirk, but her lips only twitched crookedly, refusing to comply. Nova, you almost... Her voice trembled, as did her hands. Shifting to her cat form, she jumped onto the witch's lap and lay down. Nova began to stroke her back slowly, trying to ignore her own trembling. I'm fine, Onyx. Thanks for coming to my rescue. I hope I haven't messed up your plans too much. Do you need anything? Water? The girl was standing at the kitchen door, wringing her hands. The skin on her wrists was untouched. Initiation is only allowed upon reaching the age of 23. She looks younger, hardly older than 17. Vesper put her hands on Maya's shoulder and smiled gently. It's okay, thank you. I'll handle it. It's late. You have school tomorrow. Go to bed. Maya shook her head resolutely. It wouldn't hurt for me to practice running the shelter. I'll inherit it eventually. I'll make you some tea. The Signora Nova is still shaking from the cold. If only it was from the cold. Maya went to the kitchen, not waiting for an answer. Vesper sat down on the couch next to the other witch, resting her elbows on her knees, and they exchanged worried glances. It's good I didn't have to do magic. They probably wouldn't have known that more than one person had used presents, but it's better this way, safer for my cover. Unpleasant, sticky silence. Finally, Nova expressed what was on both their minds. Grigorov recognized me at the Vatican. I was wearing a veil, my eyes were a different color. He probably didn't immediately realize where he'd seen me before. But he did figure it out eventually. He remembered me. And now, on top of escaping the catacombs and attacking the Magistrum's Archvenator, I can add forgery to my list of achievements. And now the entire city will know my face. Vesper shook her head, pressing her palm to her forehead. You shouldn't have crossed paths with him. Everything went wrong when you got lost. I should have studied the map of the Vatican with you before sending you there. I didn't actually get lost, but I digress. I wouldn't have been in that wing if I didn't have to meet with Renato. Vesper, the past cannot be changed. I'll be even more careful, not going outside unless absolutely necessary. The older witch ran her fingers through her hair. I hope that will be enough. Turning to look at Nova's eyes, Vesper said softly, At least you're okay. For a moment, I thought. She stopped trying to find the words to finish the sentence and instead added, Don't die, okay? Nova smiled faintly. Afraid of losing your secret weapon? Only vaguely shrugging her shoulders in response, Vesper turned away with an unreadable expression on her face. She looked at her phone. Faye still hasn't contacted me. I think we'll spend the night here. It's too far to walk through the tunnels to the nest. In the morning, I'll call Shin or one of the other warlocks to pick us up. I'll need to warn Renato that I'm not coming. Not today, probably not in the near future, considering that I'm on TV now. Maya came into the room. Putting a tray on the coffee table, she filled the cups with tea. Then she sat down on the very edge of the sofa and folded her hands in her lap, as if she was sitting in front of two teachers. Please, drink. Thank you. The clinking of the cups and saucers felt essentially loud in the silence that fell over them. Nova cleared her throat, taking another sip of the weak tea. Maya, your presence has already manifested itself, right? Have you figured out what your predisposition is? This attempt to start a conversation was met with little enthusiasm. Vesper kicked the catcher lightly, and Maya herself looked at Nova as if she had heard her. What's this all about? I'm sorry if I said something wrong. It's okay, I'm used to being asked about this. I'm ordinary, like Dad. Oh. Maya's mother, Orly, was in my coven. Such a talented witch. I was hoping to become like her one day, but presents didn't choose me. Wow, I'd give anything not to have been born an other. Maya wants to be one. If I had been raised differently, maybe I would have been grateful for my gift. You can still help the community, even as an ordinary. We need the support of people like you. Everyone says that. That's why I told my parents that I wanted to be more involved in running the shelter. It was clear from her expression that she wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea, however. Support her. Is something bothering you? Bothering is a strong word, but this just doesn't feel like it's enough. If I had powers, maybe... You don't need to have powers to contribute. Like our current situation, Vesper and I ended up in this part of the suburbs, and we needed to get away as soon as possible. Your parents are in Florence. If you hadn't been willing to manage the shelter while they were gone, it would have been closed. We would have had to look for another place, at a time when every second counts. Also, you don't have to limit yourself to running a shelter. Over time, there may be other opportunities. Ordinary people have something that others don't, a voice. Your special power is the fact that people are likely to listen to you. Just take your time, okay? Be careful. You're still young. Plenty of time to get into trouble. Maya smiled for the first time. Thank you, Signora Nova. I think you're right. Vesper nodded as a sign of respect, and Nova bit her lip. In reality, I should advise Maya to give up all to avoid risking her own well-being, even if it means she has to leave her own mother. Noticing that her guests' cups were empty, Maya stood up and pointed towards the hall. I'll show you to your rooms. Realizing that Nova was going to bed, Onyx got up and jumped to the slightly open window. See you at the nest. Ow. Vesper waved at the Animorphics, and she disappeared into the street. The witches followed the girl. Maya brought her a fresh set of clothes so she could change the next day. It doesn't hurt. I feel like mine smells like gunpowder. It probably doesn't actually, but still. Nova asked to take the room at the end of the hall, lying that she'd recently become a lighter sleeper. That way they won't hear me if I'm on the phone. On the other hand, maybe it's better to just send a text. Call him. I won't be able to tell him anything vital since we only share such information in person. Still, it seems like a call would be more appropriate than a text message. Taking out the phone that she always kept close, the witch dialed the number. Renato picked up the phone after the first ring. Good evening. Hello. I know why you're calling. I've already seen your appearance in today's news. She could hear the smile in his voice. She herself smiled, shaking her head. You're never in the clear when you're on a mission like this. As soon as you solve one problem, another one appears. I look terrible in the photos they took before they sent me to the catacombs. She laughed briefly, surprised she could laugh at all, when everything seemed to be at its worst. However, things could get even worse at any moment. He didn't laugh with her. His next words sounded deliberately stern. I suppose we'll have to revise the format of our collaboration, considering it won't be safe for you to go outside for a while. It's always been unsafe. I'll wait it out a week, maybe two, and we'll see. I'll inform the Cardinal as soon as possible. I think he's already seen it all. Tell him I won't let him down. Okay, and Nova, are you alright? Hearing his question, the catcher frowned, wondering why Renato asked and why she felt so. Will you be able to continue the mission? Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank God. Goodbye now. Thank you for calling. Goodbye. Hanging up, she put the phone away, undressed, and got into the cold bed. The next morning, someone knocked on her door. Not with their knuckles, as Vesper would, but with the edge of the palm clenched into a fist. Fumbling under the blanket, Noah asked the visitor to wait. She got up and slowly pulled on her clothes, still sleepy. Yes, who doesn't slip into a dress before getting up and answering the door? We can have a map on us. kind of dig it, though. That one's not bad. Pisces. I kind of dig that one, too. Sagittarius is alright. This one's a tough one, but I'll go with, because she was already wearing black. Is this my choice? All good. Ah, yes, we need to choose our hair, get our hair done before we go out in the world, I'm just gonna keep it my current hairstyle. I really like it. Another knock, this time even more impatient. Yes, I'm coming. She opened the door and saw Shen leaning against the wall, arms folded over his chest. You're slow. And you're impatient. You think so? React passively, aggressively. Don't take it personally. Tease him on the verge of flirting. Yeah, why not? Next time you bang on the door like that, I think you want me to open it half-dressed. You flustered Shen. That's a surprise. He looked her up and down. A shadow of something between surprise, disbelief, and embarrassment passed over his face. It didn't linger. The warlock's usual indifference returned almost instantly. If you take so long to get ready next time, I won't bother with doors and just portal into your room. No matter what state of you're in, dressed or undressed. Nova froze. Meanwhile, Shen turned around and, motioning for her to follow him, walked forward along the hall. Eventually coming to her senses, she followed him. The residents of the shelter, who were sitting in the common room, dispersed upon seeing them. Where's Vesper? She has business to attend to. I portaled her as soon as I got here. She wanted to say goodbye, but decided not to wake you up. Taking an apple from the table, Nova took a bite. As she chewed, she felt Shen's attentive gaze on her. I can share it with you if you ask nicely. I don't like fruit. Why are you staring, then? Vesper told me about what happened yesterday. You... okay? For some reason, the question felt awkward for both of them, so the catcher just nodded, decided not to give a detailed answer, and changed the subject. Did, Bay come back? Yes. Just at that moment, they heard footsteps in the hall. A woman shuffled into the room. What are you doing here? You were told to lie down and wait for the herbalist. Your rib is broken. The hell happened to you? She rolled her eyes and, grunting, sank into the chair. Bruises were obvious, undoubtedly fresh, but her dark eyes still sparkled with the skepticism that Nova had grown used to catching glimpses of in the rear-view mirror. Oh, my, this is terrible. What happened to you? She shrugged, curling her lips, and didn't answer. Who did this to you? Take a guess. Ordinaries? Hold on. Are you pretending to be an ordinary to work for Vesper? She just literally has no voice. Silence yet again. Just like every time before. Nova caught Shen looking at her, puzzled for whatever reason. And then she realized she wasn't sure she'd ever hear the driver say anything more elaborate than, Folding her arms across her chest, she tilted her head slightly, looking at the woman in the chair. Bay? She doesn't have a voice. The catcher sighed. I get it, you don't like me. But perhaps you could at least answer me from time to time? Otherwise, I'll start thinking you're mute. There was silence for a moment, and then a hoarse, harsh sound. Shen laughing. Am I in a parallel universe? What? She clutched her side, obviously regretting allowing herself to laugh. Her beaten body didn't appreciate the sudden movement. Haha, very funny. Maybe you can explain so I can laugh too. You can start thinking she's mute. Because she is. What in the... I thought you knew. turning her palms and closing her eyes. She tapped her fingertips against each other and then spread her hands, creating a small ball of light. Oh, she talks through magic. So she's not ordinary. Okay, that's kind of cool. I thought you knew how long it'd take you to figure out. The words appeared in the air right in front of the time catcher and dissolved when she collapsed the bowl. She created another one to write the next line. And it seemed like you'd just accepted that I wasn't talking to you. Because one of your glares is worth 1,000 words. I've been wary of you since day one. As you should be. Well, that's one mystery solved. Now that that's sorted, I feel like a fool, but whatever. I just want to know how beat up you were and why. Vesper taught me how to hide the mark, but this spell, like others, is difficult for me because of my muteness, so I use it rarely, only when absolutely necessary. Otherwise, I cover the mark with the good old long sleeves. I went out to the store while I was waiting. I guess at some point I made a careless movement and a few idiots noticed the edge of my mark. They were clearly looking for some fun. It's so easy to get away with harming others. They waited for me around the corner, shoved me against the wall, and started coming at me. But you... Noah trailed off, not sure how to formulate her thoughts. Look like I could kick anyone's ass. I can. I would have dealt with them if I was sure it wouldn't jeopardize my cover and Vesper's. If I had hit back, even in self-defense, they could have called the Magistrum. And when dealing with the Magistrum, things never end well. I have fake documents that say I'm ordinary, but the last thing we need is someone to start digging. You never know who might discover your secrets, or when. It's better not to take chances. So you just let them beat you up? What else was I supposed to do? In the end, I managed to concentrate enough to hide the mark. I pulled up my sleeve while they were kicking me. You should have seen their faces. They started accusing each other. You said she was a freak. No. You said you saw the brand. In the end, they ran away, just letting me spit blood, when they realized their victim was a rightful member of society. She clenched her jaw, averting her gaze. Her nostrils flared with anger. Wow. I wish we could find these scum. For what? Just to get a good look at them? We can't do anything to them. They'll never pay for what they've done. But it doesn't matter. Jen broke into conversation. The herbalist will be here in about 20. I've got things to do, so we have to go. He walked over to the chair where Bay was sitting. Come on. Something tells me you won't be able to get back to your room on your own. The warlock helped her up and led her out of the room, but soon returned. Ready? Yes. We're going to the nest, right? Yes. The man coughed and hit his chest a couple of times. Aging is taking its toll on you, huh? Ha. I'd like to see how you'd hold up if you had a portal 3 times in a couple of hours. He's right. It's gonna be the 4th time now. Shen, why don't you get some rest? Me? Nova looked left and right, then returned her gaze to Shen. I don't see any other Shens here. I have things to do. I don't have time for... Rolling her eyes, the catcher went closer, forced him into a chair, pushing him down by his shoulders. She knew she was weaker than him, and if he hadn't wanted to, he definitely wouldn't have succumbed to her, but Shen sat down, obviously too exhausted to get into an argument. I'm sure you don't have time to recover after getting clutched, either. Exhale. Up to this point, it was always the other way around. He talked, she listened, but the witch decided it was her turn to give orders. Part of her was still expecting him to protest or make some sort of sarcastic comment, but after a short pause, he looked into her eyes and obeyed. His chest slowly sank. He wasn't feeling well, she could see that much, even though he was trying to pretend that he could shoulder the weight of the world and carry it without a break. Wait here. Nova took the liberty of rummaging through the kitchen cabinet. She wasn't a herbalist and couldn't give him a tincture, but no special skill was required to brew a warming drink. Remembering Shin's tea of choice, she found some oolong after brewing it. The witch returned to the common room and handed the warlock a hot cup. He seemed to tense up, accepting it, but relaxed as he inhaled the scent, and the corners of his lips lifted into a faint smile. "You remembered, then?" "I did." The catcher leaned on the armrest of the chair, clasping her hands. "I'll have to move my meetings. I'll just tell everyone I was taken hostage by a witch." Shin blinked slowly, tiredly taking a sip. He made himself comfortable, sinking into the soft upholstery. "You don't have to lie." "That wouldn't be a lie. You're making me stay against my will. You demanded that I drink tea." Nova shook her head. "Oh, you're not used to being taken care of at all, are you?" She said it before she had time to think. Her cheeks began to tingle with a little something from a slight blush, while Shin stared up at her, squinting. "I can take care of myself." "Oh, everyone knows that, trust me. But these concepts aren't mutually exclusive. You need to be able to accept help." "Why?" "Depends on the situation. If you burn yourself out, will you be useful to others? No. If someone stabs you in the back, are you going to run away from everyone saying you can handle it yourself?" The words burned her lips. A knife in the back would be delivered by her hand. "I'm self-reliant, not stupid." "Yeah, right, drink." Shin cast a glance at her, but took another sip. "He's more accommodating than usual today. It must mean he's exhausted." She went to the kitchen for a few minutes to get some water. When she returned, she found she was right. Shin had fallen asleep in the armchair. The empty cup rested on his lap, held loosely by his slender fingers. The collar of his coat had flopped to the side, and his breathing was quiet and even. He was always so collected, calm, but there was a tension in his calmness, as if there were an anchor preparing to release an arrow at any moment. Even now, as he slept, his eyebrows trembled slightly. "I don't want to wake him up, but I need to wake him with a gentle touch, or by saying his name softly." A gentle touch. With a racing heart, Nova quietly went closer. Reaching out, she touched his shoulder lightly. He shuddered, but didn't open his eyes, only exhaled in his sleep. Then the catcher, without thinking, ran her fingertips up his cheek. His stubble pricked her skin. She could feel the warmth of his body, could almost hear his pulse, uncharacteristically rapid. Tracing the line of his chin, she didn't even notice herself leaning towards him, as if trying to capture how it felt to see him like this. Close. She opened her mouth to whisper his name, but instead a short scream escaped her lips. Shin suddenly opened his eyes and wrapped his fingers around her wrist, not painfully, but firmly. "Ah!" Miraculously, the cup didn't fall from his lap. 1 second, 2, 3. Her face hovered over his, and they looked into each other's eyes, their gazes heavier than lead. Finally, Shin said only one word. "Careful." Releasing a wrist, he got up from his chair, put the cup on the table, and began drawing a portal in silence. Nova swallowed her embarrassment, waiting patiently. When everything was ready, she stood in the circle. The warlock took a bottle out of his pocket and gulped down its contents. The witch took a deep breath, but no spell followed. What did was... "Thank you." Without waiting for an answer, Shin portaled them. Weather worsened by the evening, but Nova didn't mind. She settled down on the couch in the common room, listening to the patter of rain on the glass and the occasional peal of thunder. Putting aside one of the encyclopedias she'd taken from the vault, she moved on to the next book. The room was noisy, people were scurrying back and forth. There were rattling dishes, chatting, but the catcher chose to stay there instead of going to her room. She loved the rain, but didn't like being alone in thunderstorms. Too immersed in her work, Nova didn't notice that someone approached her until the figure blocked her lighted source. Hey, could you... Oh. Hello, Lucian. Elegant outfit. Spectacular outfit. Usual outfit. Is it me, or am I the only one who digs the usual outfit? But we'll give him a red one, I guess. The vampire bowed his head in greeting. How's the work going? Nova shrugged. Not particularly successful. Have you found anything? Not yet, but I might tonight. I was going to spend the night in our library. Would you like to join me? He smiled, and just at the moment, lightning flashed outside the window, illuminating his sharp fangs. His fangs fascinate me. Nova. A library, you say? I'd be happy to work with you. Likewise. Nova got up. Would you mind traversing through the shadows? Nope. Just give me the drops so I can use them right away. Lucian handed her the bottle and squeezed it in her hand. First thing Nova heard was the crackling logs in the fireplace. She quickly used the drops to relieve the irritation and began looking around, taking a step forward. Welcome. What a collection. The catcher expected to see at least a couple of vampires there, but the room was empty apart from them. Noticing her confusion, he explained. This is Constantino's personal library. He collected all the books you see here himself. Some are extremely rare. He has allowed us to use his resources to further our research. How nice of him. The man laughed softly as he walked along one of the bookcases, examining the spines. Nice is not the word I'd use to describe anything Constantino does. He calculates his every step. Feels like a clan trait. After looking around the library again, Nova stopped, brows knitted in thought. I feel like I've seen something like this before. I've seen a similar... I don't know. Am I going to recall the last, 10 plus chapters to figure out one item? Portrait. She moved closer to the painting, peering into the face of the woman depicted in it. Her charcoal curls were a sharp contrast to her pale, almost porcelain skin. Nova would have thought she was sick if it wasn't for her eyes. Clear, crisp, like morning frost, they commanded you to obey her will, bow your head before her majesty. Vincenza. The witch was staring at the portrait so intently that she didn't notice Lucian standing behind her. Then again, she probably wouldn't have heard his footsteps anyway, unless he wanted her to. Constantino's wife. He hangs her portraits every... Oh, that's right. That's where I saw her. In your vampire lair. Lucian laughed. Vampire lair. Yes, there's a painting of her there, too. You are attentive. I'm surprised you remembered. Call it a lucky guess. Well, I used to work with art. It's my job to notice things like that. Vincenza. The name suits her. Ask about her wife. Is she... dead? Has been for a long while now. Her and Constantino had a special bond. She was not his only wife, but also his Nosferata. What does that mean? It was she who turned him. Vincenza was the matriarch of our clan. Constantino took over after her death. It was long before my time, so I don't know all the details, but even though he was relatively young for a vampire at the time, he proved to be a reliable leader and has held the position ever since, which is somewhat surprising, considering that most of us are pretty power-hungry creatures. I see. Vampires don't die naturally, so I assume she was murdered, yes. In the traditional way, if I may call it that. They locked her in a cage with a bright light to prevent her from slipping into the shadows, drained her blood, and then burned her. Looking at the painting, Nova shuddered, imagining this defiant woman surrounded by flames. Thinking about it made her remember the touch of a red-hot brand on her skin. She rubbed her wrist, turning away from the painting. We should probably start a research. Lucian nodded and pointed to the full bookcases. Take your pick. The section should contain everything that is related to the Second World War. Lucian and Nova began studying the volumes, setting aside those that had mentions of art. There may be something useful in that book on the top shelf. She reached up, but it was only tall enough to touch the bottom of the spine. After making a couple more attempts, the catcher gave up, then noticed a small, steep step stool nearby. Just what I needed. Putting the step stool in place, she started to climb and only discovered the last step really disliked her for some reason. There was an indignant creak. Nova was about to lose her balance, but Lucian caught her. That's a diamond choice. Before she could get closely acquainted with the undoubtedly expensive wood floors and potentially break her nose, Lucian wrapped his arms around her waist. Even now his touch was tactful, careful, not overly firm. Lifting her into the air as if it didn't require any effort, which was probably the case, the vampire lifted her off the stool and set her on the floor. Nova blinked a couple of times, recovering from the adrenaline. She leaned back against the shelf, putting her hand to her chest. Are you hurt? He could see that she was fine, but thanks to him, but asked anyway, thoughtfully. No. Could have asked me for help. I could have handled it myself. But you didn't. No. With each word, Lucian was getting closer. With each word, Nova instinctively pressed her back into the bookcase. With each word, the air grew heavier. She looked at him, up at him, trying to steady her breath, so that he wouldn't think that the smell of his skin was messing with her head, so that he wouldn't suppose that his proximity had any effect on her. Silver eyes on amber, searching for answers to questions yet unasked, but in vain. She made sure nobody would be able to get through the wall of fire that guarded her soul. Lucian saw that. He felt it and understood it, but refused to give up. She didn't expect him to. He slowly leaned even closer until their faces were an inch apart. And now? She looked at his lips. And now what? Will you ask me to help, Huntress? The answer came out by itself. Could you help me, Lucian? Please. Avec plaisir. The next second, he was a step away from her, breaking tension that hung between them. The book was in his hand. There you are, my lady. As if coming back to her senses, Nova swallowed. He bowed, handing her the book, and she accepted it, her head still spinning. Oh, this is getting out of control. First Onyx, now Lucian. What's the matter with me? I have to pull myself together. I must. The witch turned away to hide her blush. Let's get started. Lucian wiped the smirk off of his face, noticing her embarrassment and discomfort, although he couldn't know what exactly caused them. They settled down in the reading room. Nova forced herself to switch from self-flagellation to work. Where are you going to start? Nova studied the stacks of books, and a dark blue cover caught her attention. The book was called Saving Lady with Ermine. It seemed Lucian chose it. Is this about Leonardo da Vinci's Lady with an Ermine? I remember it was in the same collection as a portrait of a young man before the Second World War. Yes. I think this contains the memoirs of a person who participated in the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program. I felt like this could be a promising direction. Nova perked up, remembering the details. This program was created to protect cultural property during the war. Those who took part, mainly art historians and museum personnel, searched for and returned paintings and monuments stolen by the Nazis. Lady with an ermine, as well as a portrait of a young man, were kept in the Zortowski family collections in Krakow, that's the city in... Oh, I must think. Belarus, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Poland. Poland. A lot of things happen in WW2 in Poland, so we'll go with Poland. It's a safe bet. Precisely. Before the war started, there was an attempt to hide the paintings, but it wasn't successful. The catcher picked up the thought, remembering what she'd read before. When Germany occupied Poland, the Nazis confiscated many works of art, including the lady and the portrait. Their last owner, if you can call him that, was Hans Frank, head of the general government in the German occupation of Poland. At the end of the war, he fled in Bavaria, taking a collection of paintings with him, but Raffaello's piece wasn't among them. When he was arrested, he gave out the locations of the caches where they had hid cultural treasures, but nobody was able to find the portrait, even after searching these locations thoroughly. And that's where the trail ends. Yes. It occurred to me that we should study the records of the Monuments men. We can't interrogate Frank, after all. Which is something I'm actually happy about. I remember the Nuremberg trials. Sometimes I forget that Lucien lived through 2 world wars. At the time the second one started, he was, about 50? He was already a vampire. Surprising that Hitler didn't violate the treaty prohibiting the use of magic in the military operations. Lucien pursed his lips. There were rumors he was going to. That he had laboratories where they experimented on others. On the other hand, you can find those in almost every country. Even now, even though everyone's trying to pretend that it isn't true. Depressing the slimy feeling that these words caused in her, Nova rushed to distract herself and open Saving Lady with an ermine. I think you're right. The people who were searching for the lost works of art might have known something. I'll start with this book, and you can read about the program and its participants. Having distributed the task, they plunged into their research. The author of Saving Lady with Ermine was Lieutenant Elvin Jones. As expected, in the book, he talked about the process of searching for missing cultural property. Portrait of a young man was mentioned several times, but there was not much to go on. Nova was flipping to another page when they suddenly heard a loud noise outside the library door. Looking up, she found Lucien already standing in the middle of the hallway, frowning. Stay behind me, Nova. Looks like we have an uninvited guests. Thank the developers. Listen, I don't have many diamonds. What do you want from me? I give you a 4. Alright, so we gain 1 moon, 3 moon, or excuse me, 1 sun, 3 moon. 4 status, which, yay! No power, and let's go ahead and get those diamonds here in a minute. But without further ado, thank you all for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And in the description, plenty of things to check out there, ways to support, and ways to become more a part of this community. With that being said, thanks again for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and I'll catch you all hopefully in the next video. Peace out.